What's good, Buff Nation? Welcome on into the Sko Show right here on Mile High Sports, powered by our friends over at Peckish. Been a minute. We back, baby. You were halfway across the world. I was in New Orleans for the Super Bowl.
Always been traveling.
Yeah.
Enjoying the off season, but it's time to talk a little Buffs.
100%. We've got some coaching updates that we'll get into throughout the course of the program. A lot has happened since the last time that Chase and I were together in person to do this show. So we'll break all that down. Have a good time. As always, Buff Nation, make sure to hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. That way you guys never, ever miss an episode of the Sko Show right here on the Mile High Sports YouTube channel. Also, be sure to check out our friends over at Peckish, proud presenting sponsor of the Sko Show. 2 locations across Colorado. Denver Tech Center off of I-25 in Bellevue and up on the hill in Boulder. More from our friends over at Peckish in just a moment. But before we get into the coaching search, here is a message from Coach Prime at Radio Row.
What's your favorite color?
Well, lately I've been into dark chocolate. So that's been like my thing, you know.
You been dark chocolate, huh?
You know,
You been into dark chocolate.
It's been the flavor of my season, let me tell you.
I understand. I understand.
You know, more to come.
Yes,
I thought you were going to
Lord.
say red.
No,
but
I like that dark
I mean,
chocolate.
red is like
She
my
said
favorite,
dark
but I
chocolate.
mean,
Yeah, she
everything.
did.
Yeah, she said dark
I
chocolate.
like dark chocolate.
Yeah,
Even in my search, you'll
Hold
see
on.
dark chocolate.
That is,
Let
I
me
feel
see.
like.
That is good. Chocolate.
I love it. Oh my god. Oh my gosh, I love it. I'm like, okay.
Coach Prime put in the work with the Bella twins out there at Radio Row.
Dark chocolate.
I didn't know dark chocolate was a color, to be honest with you, like for
Well,
clothing like
you
that.
know, it gets Deion going.
Absolutely. I mean, like if someone asked me, like, what's your favorite color for clothing? Like black,
Yeah.
you know, like white,
Oh.
brown, dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate.
What was,
color of the season.
yeah, what-
That's darker than mocha. I know mocha's kind of a color,
Yeah,
right?
mocha. It's not coffee brown,
Coffee brown.
right? Like the Bella twins, I think they knew what they were doing with that one.
Well,
Co-
dark chocolate. Out of all the appearances of Coach Prime on Radio Row, that was the only one that really mattered to me.
Yeah, you see the way he got up in his chair too?
Mm.
He was like, game time, prime time, baby, let's go. Yeah, exactly. What time is it? What time is it? Love that. That was like the highlight of Radio Row for me.
When that clip came out, it's just awesome.
Yeah, Travis Hunter was down there. Had a chance to see him a little bit. Shador was down there as well, so they're making the rounds. A couple of guys that I think are pretty much media pros at this point, right?
Julian Lewis, I think, made a trip down to NOLA.
I did not see him, but that sounds about right. So gotta love it, man. The Buffs were well represented in New Orleans.
Well represented, all over TV, all over ESPN, all the biggest radio shows. That's kind of what they do. Warren Sapp, as well.
Warren
was down
Sapp.
there doing a few hits.
And we'll talk about Warren Sapp here as we've got some coaching.
Good transition.
updates.
God, you're a pro.
I am a pro. What can I say, man? So I get paid the big bucks.
Warren Sapp, maybe the new defensive line coach of the Colorado Buffaloes.
Yeah, we got a Hall of Famer joining the coaching staff as well. So why don't we, because the last time we did a show in person was probably what, 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even more, like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I want to say.
Yeah, we recorded a few before I left, and they may have gotten a little old for some of our viewers. A lot of offensive line changes right after we did that offensive starter prediction video, and yeah, so it's been a while, probably over a month. I took a trip for about a month.
Yeah, where were you? Let the listeners know.
Bahamas for 2 weeks, a few nights in Miami, went down to Panama City, Panama, and then shot over to Bogota, Colombia.
This is the world traveler over here.
Exactly.
What was your favorite country?
Colombia. Colombia's amazing.
Sick.
Yeah, there's beautiful women, beautiful sights, very clean city, great weather. Bogota is at 8,000 feet of elevation, so
Wow.
it kind of felt like home. Amazing.
Love it. Well, happy to have you back. Happy to be back here on the Sko Show. And if you want more updates, like in between the shows, I'm at Media by AP. He's at Chase Howell _ on social media. So be sure to follow us over there and check us out. But let's get, before we kind of get to like the new guys that are coming in, someone got a nice little raise. Defensive coordinator Robert Livingston with a nice little contract extension, $1.5 million this year, about $1.6 million next year. Highest paid assistant coach in the history of Colorado football, and boy, oh boy, does he deserve it, Chase.
Exactly. Yeah. What he was able to do during year one, we saw how much that defense improved, especially after the first few weeks. I think everybody likes Coach Livingston. over in Boulder, you hear so many good things. You heard Warren Sapp talk about him on one of his radio hits and just how great of a mind he is, but also how much he cares about his players. I think every single player loves him. So that was a big one to keep around. I know they can't keep everybody, especially some of those lower level assistants, but I think Coach Prime really wanted to keep his coordinators, and Robert Livingston deserved the bag. And now he's one of the highest paid assistant coaches in all of Big 12, obviously the highest paid coach in Colorado football history. So well deserved.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with Robert Livingston, right, it's kind of crazy to think back like this time last year. Remember, like, CU was without a defensive coordinator. They didn't really hire him until pretty late into the cycle. And there were some questions of like, who is this guy? What is he going to do? How's he going to fit in? And he's fit in seamlessly. And look, I know we all want Coach Prime to be here for the end of time, but this is a guy that whenever Coach Prime eventually decides to move on or retire, like, he could be the heir apparent as the next head coach for CU.
I think he is on that track. I think if you pointed to one guy right now and said who would take over from Coach Prime that's currently on the staff, I think you point right to Rob Livingston. So keep him around for as long as you can.
Yeah, 100P. Shout out to Robert Livingston. You know, hopefully he'll get a nice little house up there, Boulder, Superior area, whatever it might be, but happy he's here to stay. But let's talk about who's gone, who's in, and kind of where we're at here. Because, like, where we're at, like, beginning of February, right? Post Super Bowl, post college football playoff, like, this is kind of like the dead time. Like, right? Like, there's still some recruiting going on, but I think it's more so about building out your staff and whatnot. Like, we'll get into it, you know, with some X's and O's when we get closer to the spring game, quarterback competition, you know, all that kind of stuff. But quite a bit of news coming out of Buffland, not just this week, but the last couple of weeks, as they've lost a couple of coaches to some different opportunities, most notably, in my opinion, offensive line coach Phil Loadholt leaving for Mississippi State. So he departs Colorado to go to the SEC, and he's going to be replaced by Gunnar White, promotion from the assistant offensive line coach, and he's been with Coach Prime since Jackson State.
Yeah, I think a little bit of a surprise when it was announced that Vincent Dancy was leaving, or excuse me, Phil Loadholt. We're going to talk about Vincent Dancy in a second, but both of them left for Mississippi State. I think a lot of people were hoping that they might do more of a national search to try to replace that offensive line coach position. But what Coach Prime really did, and this is part of the new rules, back in the day, really just over a year ago, you could only have 11 assistants, full-time assistants, and now they're able to pay them more money. So Coach Prime brought in 2 assistant offensive line coaches. One was a promotion, and George Hageman, and then Andre Giroud, who a lot of Buss fans will be excited about because they remember watching him play for the Colorado Buffaloes, played a long time in the NFL. He's spent the last couple of years in the Canadian Football League coaching the offensive line. So it seems like they're going to coach offensive line by committee, which I think is a pretty smart decision. And obviously, Coach Prime has a lot of trust in Gunnar White. He's been with him since Jackson State. He's seen how he operates. He sees how he works. He knows that he can be a good recruiter. And then you bring in 2 other guys with a lot of NFL experience that played in the NFL. That can also coach this offensive line. So they basically have 3 offensive line coaches, which this method pretty much worked last year with the defensive line. So I think Coach Prime saw what happened there, and he's pointing to these guys with NFL experience, and he's pointing to a guy like Gunnar White, who has a lot of experience with Coach Prime, and obviously Coach Prime trusts.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, he's got a pretty strong background, you know, in the player development ranks, you know, with college football, played college football at Texas Tech. So, you know, obviously a guy with some continuity, as you've mentioned, being at Jackson State, being at Colorado, and now gets his opportunity. And I think offensive line, like to your point, Chase, like it worked last year with the defensive line, and we'll get to them here in a moment as well. But that's got to be, in my opinion, the number one point of emphasis for Colorado this offseason is improving that offensive line, because you know what you're going to have at the wide receiver position. The defense should be pretty good, right? You got some stuff in the trenches there as well. But I think the Buffs' success with a new quarterback where you don't have Shador, and that's not anything against Caden Salter or Julian Lewis, but like Shador was so good at improving and scrambling and getting out of the pocket. Like, you want to make sure Jordan Seaton and the fellas are coached up the right way to protect their new quarterback.
Yeah, and it's going to be about establishing a run game. We haven't seen a run game over the first 2 seasons with Coach Prime, and Shador was able to make that not as big of a deal, but they're going to have to run the football this next season, especially
100%.
If a guy like Caden Salter ends up being your quarterback who's going to run it himself. But they're going to have to figure out a way to run the football, and that all starts with the offensive line. So this is a very important position. I think they have some depth there. It's going to be interesting to see who ends up being the starting five, because I think they have about 10, 11 guys that can end up being the starters on the offensive line. But these three coaches are going to figure it out. And I think Coach Prime has a lot of faith at who he has coaching this group. So we'll see. I think there's going to be a lot of competition at that position. And the hope is that they're going to be able to run the football next year, because they just have not been able to do that at all.
Yeah, 100%. And speaking of Andre Garrod as well, you're talking about a guy, obviously there's the connection with Colorado, but had some pretty high-level success playing in the NFL as well. A two-time All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler. I believe he and Deion overlapped a little bit with the Dallas Cowboys back in the day as well. So some familiarity there, but also a guy who's polished as a player who can now share that knowledge to the players on the field in Colorado.
Yeah, I think it's a great hire. There's not many CU legacies on this coaching staff. I think having those types of guys around are always important. They can tell you a little bit about the history that not a lot of people know about. And Andre Giroux was on some really, really good teams back in the day. So
he's a Hall of Famer for CU.
CU
2023.
Yeah, just last year. So I think that's a very exciting hire. It could be one of your future offensive line coaches. And I also like that it's not just a guy that has played in the NFL. He has some experience coaching an offensive line. He spent some time in the Canadian Football League coaching some pros. So I'm kind of excited to see what these three guys can do with this offensive line.
Yeah, and Garrod, to correct myself, did not overlap with Coach Prime in the NFL. I'm thinking about George Hegman, who played with the Dallas Cowboys from 1994 through 1997. So won a couple of Super Bowls there, 94, 96, and obviously 96. Deion was a part of that Dallas Cowboy team there as well, but also played with Philly for a year and a couple other years in the NFL as well. So guys that, that's something that Coach Prime has prided himself on, is hiring guys that are going to help get these kids ready to not just succeed, but thrive at the next level. So plenty of experience at arguably the most important position, not just in college football, but all of football. I mean, look at what happened to the Kansas City Chiefs over the weekend. It starts and ends in the trenches.
Yeah, he talked about it on one of his radio appearances, or maybe multiple radio appearances. I watched Coach Prime on so many different shows. I don't remember which one.
He's everywhere.
But he said
worldwide
that he figured out after his first year that he really loves working with pros. Guys that have played pro football or have coached a lot of pro football. And I think that's what we saw him do with this offensive line. So it really should be no surprise. But Coach Prime has said that he loves working with pros. He wants an NFL style team. And I think he brings in a lot of NFL experience, which, you're a pro. You know how to transition this. He's bringing in another Hall of Famer as well.
Yeah, 100%. And, when it comes to the offensive line, obviously you got a Hall of Famer and Coach Prime already as your head coach, right? And then you bring in Warren Sapp last year, and we'll talk about him in here in just a moment. But running back, a position of emphasis as well for Colorado. They kind of went by committee last year with a couple of guys. Who's better to help lead the charge at the running back position as a coach than the Hall of Famer Marshall Faulk?
No, it was kind of a surprise to me when this news came out. Like, you're like, oh, Marshall Faulk.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's a name that anybody who has watched football over the past 20 years probably knows, and knows how good of a running back he was in the NFL. I don't think it was that much of a surprise once it kind of settles in, and you're like, of course, Coach Prime went after one of his good friends, a guy that he worked at the NFL Network with, a guy that was at the peak of his career around the same time that Coach Prime was at the peak of his career. He goes out and gets Marshall Faulk to be his running back coach. So now you have 3 gold jackets on this coaching staff, and it's obviously something that we really haven't seen in college football before, but it's not a surprise that Coach Prime continues to go out and get some of his friends that have proven in the NFL to be one of the best. And I think we'll see if they're able to coach these kids, but everything that I've heard about Marshall Faulk, it sounds like he's going to be able to do that.
Well, and I love the combination. Like, it's not just hiring friends for the sake of hiring friends, right? Like, sometimes people make some money, right? They're in a business, whatever it might be, and they want to take all their buddies along with them, for the ride. But it's maybe more so about the friendship than it is about the business. And I think it's a really nice balance here with a guy like Marshall Faulk, with Warren Sapp, of guys that go way back to their playing days, that have a great relationship, but also want to do this for the right reasons and help build this program out. And not that I need to remind anybody of the credentials of Marshall Faulk, but I'm going to go ahead and do that just so you guys understand what they're getting as their running back coach here. Hall of Famer, 7-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, Super Bowl champion, 2000 AP MVP, 3-time AP Offensive Player of the Year, 1994 AP Player Rookie of the Year. I mean, award after award after award after award. That's what you're getting is a well-rounded person and player in Marshall Faulk that's now going to share that knowledge to the players, because I think, as we said, It matters a lot in the trenches, but if the trenches can do their job, that's going to open up opportunities for Marshall Faulk and his rushing attack with Colorado.
Yeah, we talked about their need to be able to run the football this next season, and you bring in a guy like Marshall Faulk to help the running backs. Obviously, it starts with the offensive line, but these running backs are going to get some of the best coaching out there, and to be able to have a guy like Marshall Faulk, and I think I heard Rich Eisen say it. He was interviewing either Warren Sapp or Coach Prime. He said, Marshall Faulk's not only going to teach him how to run the football, he's going to teach him how to catch the football. He's going to teach him how to block for their quarterback. He was a well-rounded running back when he was in the NFL and making all these Pro Bowls, and he's going to teach these guys how to be well-rounded running backs as well. So couldn't be cooler to bring in another Hall of Famer. I'm excited to see what he's able to do. This run game, I think, will be completely different than what we've seen the last 2 years.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's only got 100 touchdowns and 12,000 plus rushing yards in the NFL, like light work, right? Like, I mean, what more could you possibly ask for? So, offensive line, running back coach have been addressed here for Coach Prime. Are we missing anything else on offense?
Those are the only big changes.
Big ones, yeah. So we'll move over to the defense here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about our friends over at Peckish. I had incredible food when I was in New Orleans. I'm not going to complain about that whatsoever. I think I gained like 10 pounds when I checked myself on the scale by the time I got back. But I am looking forward to going to Peckish because it is my personal favorite spot for chicken wings and pizza in the Denver metro area and up in Boulder. 2 locations across Colorado, I-25 and Bellevue, and up there on the hill in Boulder. And as I was kind of talking about with some people on Radio Row, if you know, Peckish in Boulder is a hot spot for those that are involved with Colorado football.
There were some nights where I was sitting in Nassau, Bahamas, or Panama City, Panama, or Bogota, Colombia, and I was like, God damn, I would just love to have some Peckish wings right now. I miss them. It's been too long, and we're going to have to go back and just go for a little munch sesh like we did most of last season.
Yeah, 100%. I am looking forward to pigging out, munching with our friends over at Peckish. So check them out again, 2 locations across Colorado. You can check them out on social media, the website, all that good stuff. You're not going to be steered in the wrong direction. I'm an eater. Chase likes to eat. Best wings, best pizza in town. Be sure to check out our friends over at Peckish. But okay, let's move it on over to the defense here. Why don't we go from Hall of Famer to Hall of Famer? Right? I mean, it's the expectation here that Warren Sapp is going to be the new defensive line coach after they lost Damione Lewis, who left for Miami. And I think Warren Sapp is ready and able to assume that role if that is his job.
Yeah, it obviously hasn't become official. The rumors were going to happen once Damione Lewis decided to go back to his alma mater. Coach D. Lou did a great job with this defensive line last year. I think a super likable personality. He obviously got that defensive line playing hard with the help of Warren Sapp and Vincent Dancy as well. But if they end up promoting Warren Sapp to become the defensive line coach, I think that will be I'm trying to think of the right word, but it won't be much of a surprise.
And I was going to say, I would feel a little bit like you're never going to complain about having an NFL Hall of Famer and one of the best defensive linemen of all time on your coaching staff, right? But I would have been a little, I don't know if worried is the right word, but like I like the fact that he has a year under his belt, right? Was kind of able to learn the ropes here a little bit, figure out how Coach Prime wants to coach his team, how these players play, how they respond to coaching and all that kind of stuff. So it's like he's got a bit of a background at the collegiate level now as a coach. And the one thing I think I saw it in the Prime season 3, I think is what we're on with Amazon. There was like a scene there where it's him like driving up to Boulder in the morning and he just talks about how much he loves coaching. And that maybe it wasn't something that he fully thought he would do at one point in his, post-playing career. But he's really rallied around the idea of building up this team, building up these kids, and helping them thrive at the collegiate level and get set up for success at the next level as well. So I love the addition of Warren Sapp. And if he is going to end up being the main guy for the defensive line, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah. Last year, when there was a lot of talk about bringing Warren Sapp in, I think there were some assumptions that he could become the defensive line coach. And there was a little bit of a worry of like, oh, he's never really coached at all. And he definitely hasn't coached at this level. So for him to be able to learn under a guy like Coach D. Lou for a year, who had coached in the NFL, I think it probably benefited him a ton. And now he loves coaching. He knows how to handle a group. He knows how to handle all of the different meetings that he has to go through. And I think Coach Sapp as the defensive line coach makes a ton of sense here. But we'll see. I know even if he ends up promoting Coach Sapp to defensive line coach, Coach Prime will probably bring in some other experience to help Sapp out in that group. So, yeah, I was a little sad. I think most of the defensive linemen and some of the CU fans were disappointed to see Coach DeLu go just because of how great of a job he did last season. But they have Coach Sapp there and waiting, and I think he could be ready for this job.
Well, I think Coach Prime also wants these coaches to get promotions and make more money and get more exposure, right? Like that's all part of the plan here. And Coach Prime's going to have no problem getting high-level quality coaching talent in the building for Colorado. And again, just like I did for Marshall Faulk, let me tell you about Warren Sapp's credentials in case you forgot. Hall of Famer, 7-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro, Super Bowl champion, Hall of Fame, all 1990s team. I mean, what more could you possibly ask for? And that's super attractive to potential recruits, transfer portal, all that kind of stuff. You got a Hall of Famer as your head coach. You've got a Hall of Famer in your offensive coaching scheme, and now you got a Hall of Famer in your defensive coaching scheme, and it expected to be a little bit of a bigger role here with Colorado. So you absolutely love to see it. And then,
well, you're about to mention it, but just look at what Coach Prime has done with all of these coaches. You have two that went to the SEC. You have a guy in Coach DeLu that's going back to his alma mater, obviously the University of Miami and all the prestige that comes with coaching there. So he has been able to elevate this staff.
Sean Lewis gets the SDSU head coaching job.
And I think it goes to show that what he said he was going to do when he got here, he continues to do. And he doesn't mind seeing these coaches get elevated.
Yeah, no cap from Coach Prime, as the youngins like to say out there. But the last big move for Colorado on the coaching staff, they lost another guy to Mississippi State to the SEC. That is defensive ends coach Vincent Dancy. It looks like they're going to they did promote George Helow to be that defensive end coach. So another guy that promoting from within, right? Which is usually a good sign of a wholesome coaching staff, right? That you're not having to go out there and get different guys, right? You've been able to build something in these first 2 years for Colorado. So we'll see what Mr. Helow could do replacing Mr. Dancy.
Yeah. Coach Dancy, great job. This past year after he got elevated defensive ends coach, Coach Prime gave him a chance after Coach Dancy was the head coach at an HBCU, wasn't getting many opportunities at this level, and obviously comes to CU and ends up with an SEC assistant coaching job. So great job by Coach Prime to be able to change really the life of Coach Dancy, and now he's coaching at Mississippi State. But George Helow comes in pretty late last year. I feel like it was right before fall camp. He helped out with the linebackers. We saw what he was able to do with the defensive scout. He did all the prep. He was the man. He was the eyes above for Coach Livingston. He was the one up in the booth that was telling Coach Livingston what that offense was doing. Coach Livingston gave him a lot of credit for the halftime adjustments. He would come in at halftime. And so I think what we saw from Coach Helow this past year is he's very capable of being an assistant coach at this level. He's coached linebackers before, and now is coaching defensive ends. But it's a guy that Coach Prime really trusts, and I think he's been very likable on a lot of the well-off media and a lot of those videos. So I'm excited for Coach Helow to see what he can do with this defensive end group.
Well, and a guy that has a lot of high-level coaching experience under some of the best coaches in recent college football memory. Coached at Alabama for a little bit under Nick Saban, was with Michigan for a while under Jim Harbaugh, and now is going to be coaching under Deion Sanders. So you like to see that. And, I know we don't talk about this other program a whole lot on this show, but he actually was with Colorado State for a few years from 2016 to 2019. So he's familiar with the state of Colorado, college football in Colorado, recruiting, all that kind of stuff. So you're getting a guy that is not only well liked, amongst the fans, is well respected amongst his coaching staff, but also a guy that is well tenured and has a lot of experience that he'll be able to, provide to these players on a game in, game out basis.
Yep. Some of the best content that well-off media posted during games was George Helow flying down there into the locker room at halftime, getting the boys pumped up and telling them the adjustments that they needed to make defensively. So he is kind of Rob Livingston. He had become Rob Livingston's right-hand man, so it's good to see him get promoted and keep him around for another year.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing, right? Is like they're not replacing any coordinators, right? You've got Pat Shurmur back at offensive coordinator. You're going to have Robert Livingston back at defensive coordinator with his new contract extension. So it's really, you've got the main anchors, right? Still there, your big three, Coach Prime, Livingston, and Shermer. And then it's kind of about filling out the rest of the coaching staff from there with a combination of NFL Hall of Famers and well-respected coaches in the college football ranks as well. So exciting times for Colorado. It's going to be a new era. No more Shador, no more Travis, no more Shiloh. But we know where they're at in the recruiting game. Everything's going in the right direction for Colorado. Great season last year. Very excited for what the future of the Buffs program is here moving forward. But what else? We missed anything? Any other news?
No, spring ball's right around the corner, though.
They're
doing a lot of workouts right now, getting the bodies ready, getting the bodies in shape. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about spring football. We're going to have live practice action that we've been watching on Well Off Media. So I'm excited to see what goes down there in spring ball. Obviously, we have a quarterback competition to discuss, but
some people don't like that word, though. Like, there's some people that are like, it's not a competition, it's this, it's that, blah, blah, blah. But it is, in truth.
For us in the media, that needs to stir some things up and talk about something. We're going to call it a quarterback competition. But I'm excited to see what Julian Lewis and Caden Salter bring to the table this spring. And we're really only a few weeks away till we're talking about practices again, which is pretty crazy, but it's awesome. I'm excited.
And we'll dive into this, as Chase mentioned, as we get closer to the practices and whatnot. Injury aside, if Julian Lewis is the starting quarterback for Colorado week 1, that's a great thing, because that means a teenager was able to come into the building as a highly recruited high school prospect and beat out a tenured starter who's had success across college football in Caden Salter. So we'll see what happens with the college football or with the quarterback competition, in college football in general. But make sure to hit that like button, smash that subscribe button on this Mile High Sports YouTube channel. That way you guys never, ever miss an episode of the Sko Show. Aniello, Piro, Chase, Howell. And also do us a favor and do yourself a favor. Go check out our friends over at Pecker's, 2 locations across Colorado. Get you some chicken wings, get you some za, have a good time with our friends over at Pecker's, and let them know that the Sko Show sent you. Anything else you want to get off the chest, buddy?
Don't worry about the basketball team. 0-13 in the Big 12 Conference. Normally we would be talking some tab ball on this show, but they're going to be fine. Sebastian Ranchik last night against Kansas looked great. He almost outperformed Hunter Dickinson, 19 points. So there's some things to look forward to with this basketball team. This is a tough rebuilding year, but there's a couple of young players that we can be excited about. So I just wanted to touch on that, because people that know me know that I love talking college basketball, and this is just a year where we can just forget about it, but they'll be all right.
Yeah, March Madness around the corner. Hey, KJ Simpson's doing his thing in the league.
Yeah.
Tristan DeSilva's doing his thing in the league, right? Chauncey's a head coach. Derek White, NBA champion. Spencer Dinwiddie doing his thing. So there's a lot of well-represented, CU in the basketball world there as well. So love to see. Well, he's Chase Howell. Follow him on social at Chase Howell _. I'm Aniello Piro. You can follow me at Media by AP. Hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. Shout out to my man, Danny Bailey, pushing the buttons back there as well. That's going to do it for us. Let's go Buffs, baby.
Let's go Buffs.